Packers and the Saints have had some battles over the years. We'll see if Monday night is one of those Packers 2-touchdown favorites. Let's have some fun. A Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints crossover Thursday. Let's go.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome inside another crossover Thursday, Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints. I'm with Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints host. I'm Peter Bukowski, Locked On Packers host. Today's crossover Thursday brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. Ross, Packers, 2-touchdown favorites here on Monday night against Spencer Rattler. This is not Rodgers Breeze.
Terrifying.
We've seen some good ones. We'll see if this is one of those games. Let's talk about Spencer Rattler, because valiant effort last week against the Commanders, trying to come in and get that win. The throw bounces off the shoulder pads in the end zone, the 2-point conversion. But this has been a different team under the Rizzler. You got the Rizzler and the Rattler in New Orleans. I'm loving it.
Pretty sick. Branding's off the hook.
Spencer Rattler, what does he bring here? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think it's youth, confidence, mobility. I think those are the biggest things that he kind of brings. And, whether or not it's all going to translate in the NFL is what the Saints now have the opportunity to really start to figure out. He got 3 starts earlier this season. All 3 of them were losses. The expectation here is that he'll continue to start here through at least this game, maybe a little bit further, depending upon Derek Carr's injury. But I think the difference between what you get with him and what you get with Derek Carr is that extra element of mobility. And I spoke one-on-one with Spencer Rattler a few weeks ago, asked him kind of what would he do differently in his next start rather than what he did in his original 3 starts. And he spoke about using his legs a lot more. So I think it's a little bit more of that, like making you defend all 11, which you don't have to do when Derek Carr is under center.
Yeah, the Packers have faced some mobile quarterbacks this year. They played really well against Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson, containing them. This is one of those situations where I didn't understand going to Jake Haener at any point. Like, why did they do that? Yeah. What did they think they were getting out of it?
I think it was an opportunity to just see what they had in the second year guy. I'm with you. I could not believe that they went to Jake Haener. I was very surprised by that. I thought it would have been.
The headshots are great. I love the headshots.
Yeah, sure. And so, but like I think the idea was, here's a chance to kind of evaluate this guy over the course of a week, see how he prepares the game, and then see how he operates as a starter. They had a little bit of an evaluation on Spencer Rattler, although they do consider it incomplete, considering the sort of incomplete team that was around them for Rattler's first 3 starts. And so here was an opportunity to get a look at Jake Haener, and then Darren Rizzi and the team saw one half of it and said, let's go back to that other guy real quick, and then got much better production out of that in the second half.
Why do you think this team has looked so different with Darren Rizzi as the head man? Because it does seem like there is a juice factor difference here.
Yeah, big time. Darren Rizzi has done a wonderful job getting the absolute best out of these players, or at least like that day's version of best out of those players, right? Because that idea of best varies depending upon the game. But it's the aggression, it's the belief, it's the buy-in, it's the charge, it's the drive, it's all these other things. Like it's sort of the list. What I'm basically spouting off is basically a list of like intangible coaching things, and that has just gone to show you how much coaching matters and where they were deficient in that area with Dennis Allen at the helm. I think that what you're seeing now is all those little extra intangibles that they missed when Dennis Allen was around, or didn't have when Dennis Allen is around. They were getting that, or have been getting that in droves from Darren Rizzi instead.
Yeah, you don't have to convince Packer fans, because they're seeing this right now with Jeff Hafley. Like the difference, right? There's some different personnel there too, but like the philosophical difference and just the approach has been such a drastic upgrade from what they got from Joe Barry last year. It can matter. What's weird about this, Ross, is Dennis Allen, a very good defensive coach, and yet we've actually seen an uptick in some of the pressure looks and the productivity with pressure. The defense is still not very good overall if you look at the big time numbers. But it does seem like even when you fire a very good defensive coach, that they've been able to maintain some of that, or even improve some of that defensive productivity. How are they doing it?
Yeah, well, I'll say like from the defensive side, what you've seen is they're still not great when it comes to yardage given up. They are still pretty solid when it comes to points given up. I think it's around 22, 24 points per game that they've given up over the defensive side. So it's interesting that they give up kind of these big explosive plays, but they actually do a pretty good job keeping teams out of the end zone. But it's usually because of one strong half. It's never the full complete game. And that's where it's been the biggest issue for them. I think that where you've seen the boost in the pass rush really come from is really been the moving away of Todd Grantham as a defensive line coach. Once Darren Rizzi took over, he changed a bunch of things. He reorganized the locker room and put the position groups back together again. What a wonderful idea. They reorganized their practice day. They kind of changed all these other things. Darren Rizzi really wanted to make things as like uncomfortable as possible by changing things up a little bit. And one of the other things that he changed up was that he took Todd Grantham and he said, okay, you're not on the defensive line anymore. You're a senior defensive assistant. So you go and be in the ear of Joe Woods a little bit and help to plan it's a demotion, right? Like let's call it really what it is. And so he demoted Todd Grantham. And then Brian Young, who was a longtime NFL defensive lineman, who's been here in New Orleans both through his playing days and all through his coaching days for many, many years, took over the defensive line. And when Brian Young took over the defensive line, they went away from scheme and over X's and O's, over analyzing what they're trying to do on the defensive side, and instead said, here's how you win with your hands. Here's how you win with leverage. Here's how you violent shed. Here's how you fill your run gaps. And they went all the way back to like grade 1 fundamental defensive. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. We don't have to think that hard. We just have to be better than the guy that's in front of you. And then all of a sudden, that New Orleans Saints defensive line really took a turn. And that turn continued last week with 8 sacks against a mobile quarterback, somebody that the type of quarterback they typically struggle against in Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and what stands out to me, and I was going through some of the statistical profiles and watching some of the tape, is this New Orleans passing defense, even after trading Marshawn Lattimore, right now they're 12th in DVOA, and I'm just sort of like, how are they doing this? How are they ham and egging this all together? And I still don't quite understand it. Can you help me understand this, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, look, let me be very clear, though. This is a defense and a passing defense that, is amongst the top of the NFL when it comes to 20 plus plays, 20 plus yard plays allowed, 40 plus plays allowed, all those other things. But man, like they do a good job of keeping the ball out of the end zone. And a lot of that credit goes to, of course, the individual players, but also the coaching in Marcus Robertson, who is a phenomenal defensive backs coach. He works primarily with the safeties, while Joe Woods has worked primarily with the cornerbacks all throughout the year. He has now moved into the sort of defensive play calling role as well, now that Dennis Allen's gone. And so those two guys alone, when they showed up in New Orleans a few years ago, you saw the tick up in turnovers. The turnovers have kind of calmed down for New Orleans. That's something that you'd like to see them adjust and kind of get back to gaining some ground in over the course of the end of the season here. But what they've done a really phenomenal job at is still keeping points off the board. And I think that's where you see some of that value come in from the secondary. And, shout out to young guys like Alante Taylor, as well as Kool-Aid McKinstry, who is a 2nd-round draft pick this year, rookie, that came in and is now starting games at one of the primary outside perimeter corner spots. They've again given up big plays, but they've done a very, very good job in terms of containing and keeping points off the board. And I think that's where you're seeing that value. And
this is a Packers offense that loves to hunt big plays. So this is going to be an interesting, one of those styles make fights kind of thing. So we'll see. Before we flip this over and talk about the Packers a little bit more, I have to ask you, what is it going to be like with Aaron Glenn coaching this team next year?
If he ends up being the head coach, I think it would be a fantastic hire for New Orleans. It's that unique blend of getting some familiarity, but also bringing somebody from outside of the organization. I think this team has gotten a little bit too married to its nostalgia of success in years past and everything. So I think that being able to do that could be a nice kind of marriage of the two approaches going in. But I'll tell you what, I mean, we talk about the things we talked about with Darren Rizzi in terms of fire, charge, motivation, all those other things. Aaron Glenn brings all that as well.
All right, let's talk about the Packers, the team that might actually be going to the playoffs this year. We'll do that next on a Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints crossover Thursday. Today's crossover Thursday brought to you by our friends at the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup. The Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity. And in the spirit of gift giving this time of year, give yourself the gift of time and using it wisely to improve yourself. History, economics. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Maybe if you did, maybe you need a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they've not changed the basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including free market economics, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, music classes, art classes. All of Hillsdale courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lecture. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, we're back. Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints, a crossover Thursday. Ross, some of my favorite games that the Packers have played over the years have been against this New Orleans team. Not sure that's going to happen on Monday night, but it's still going to be a fun one, I think, in a lot of ways. And the Packers, they've got to bring it. This is one of those things. I talked to Evan Williams. He's playing, or he's going to be on our show on Friday, and he talked about they're going to bring their fight, I think, in this one.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, this is an opportunity here to beat up on a lesser opponent, right? Like, you got to be able to show at this point, particularly making a playoff run, that you can beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. I think that that's a huge motivation for this Green Bay Packers team. I am curious, being 14.5-point favorites, like, where does that really put, the mind of the Packers analyst, the mind of the Packers fan going into this? So is that like a terrifying amount to be over?
No, Packers fans are terrified of this. And one of the reasons is the Packers in the Mike McCarthy era, especially toward the end, they had some issues in these kinds of games, issues covering in these kinds of situations. And I think this is the biggest favorite Jordan Love has ever been. We've never seen him in a position like this. This is a very young team. And we saw last year, Ross, they go out and they beat the Lions on Thanksgiving. They go out, they beat the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And then what do? In back-to-back weeks, they lose to Baker Mayfield and the Bucs and Tommy freaking DeVito and the New York Giants.
Right. That's right.
It was not the optimal, let's stack our wins kind of situation. And so you have to, it's about being focused because let's keep it a buck here. If the Packers play like a B game, they'll probably win unless the Saints have some crazy thing happen. And I think you see the health, the Packers potentially getting Luke Musgrave back. They love to play 2 tight end sets. We'll see about Quay Walker. We'll see about Javon Bullard. But this has been, along with the Bills, the healthiest offensive line in the league this year. And so those kinds of things, those continuity factors are so critical to your point, being focused, because you're not worried about like, oh, we got to fit these disparate pieces together and make it all work. And we're trying to figure out, can I work with this guy? Does this scheme work? No, this Packers team at this point, they know who they are. And I think that's just such a benefit. Even though I think the Saints, and what you're always worried about, right, is that chaos team. And Spencer Rattler, like, he's a chaos quarterback.
He brings some chaos. Yeah, he brings some chaos.
Let's get wild. And I think that's, if you're a Packer fan, you're going, all right, let's just get through this game. Like, can we just let's sim season, please, and just get to the playoffs, because they're almost certainly going to get in. But this is one of those where, like, especially if you lose this one, it could really derail a lot of the momentum that they've built up coming off probably the most impressive game that they've played defensively since like September.
Yeah. I mean, look, this could be a very interesting sort of matchup if things go right for the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be tough, right? They're on the road. It's prime time. It's Lambeau Field. It's December 23rd. It's going to be so cold, I'm not even making the trip. I saw I saw it on the schedule, and I was like, I ain't going to that one. Pass. That's going to be a no for me, dog. So that was easy for me.
Well, guys, I think that's a thing for this Packers team too. They felt that way about Miami. They said, okay, Miami's coming on Thanksgiving. Right. It's going to be freezing cold. Let's make them not want to play. Yeah. And I think you're going to see the Packers do that. I mean, if you watched, Saints fans, if you watched Sunday night, you heard Chris Collinsworth say Matt LaFleur wants to come out and set a physical tone with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs leads the NFL in first quarter touches. And I think this is a defense that, for as good as the pass defense has been, 30th in run defense DVOA, yep. That has been an issue this year. And so we know Matt LaFleur, if he thinks he can beat you by running 40 times, guess what he'll do? He'll run it 50 times. Running 40 times. Like he is going to double down and triple down in ways that, like, Mike McCarthy, for people who have been watching this matchup for a long time, never did. He was someone who's like, let's run it 3 times, and if we don't get 3 first downs, let's just chuck it 50 times today. Like that's not Matt LaFleur. And I think that's going to be a key here is for the Packers. If they can just kind of stay in script, this could get late early. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then on top of that, Jordan Love, 12th in the NFL when it comes to overall EPA, right? Total EPA. What's working for him so far this season, despite the young roster that's around him? They went through a lot of the growing pains last year. And I think that was really, it is such a credit. And everydayers on Locked On Packers are so sick of me saying this, but there is something special about what they did last year where they said, Robert Woods, no, we don't need a veteran receiver to come in and take targets away from Dontavian Wicks. Big Bob Tunyon, no, we don't need a veteran tight end to come in and take reps away from Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Let's just roll with the youngest group of pass catchers in modern NFL history, which is what they did. Right. And they dealt with the growing pains and they came out on the other side, one of the most dynamic and explosive teams in the NFL. And so even though early in the season, they still had some of these, like, we can't get lined up right, or, hey, this like shoot yourself in the foot, dumb red zone penalties. And that still persists, unfortunately, for them. But that part of this, with Jordan Love now healthy, that's been so key for this team. The interceptions, I told anyone who would listen, I probably texted you just randomly, like, hey, just so you know,
I think that's right. I think you did.
And that was one of the reasons why I felt like he was throwing all these interceptions, is because he couldn't move the way that he's used to moving. And we're seeing it since the bye week. I believe he's now second in EPA per play. I think he's number 1 in Ben Baldwin's composite, where he puts completion percentage above expectation with EPA per play. If you adjust EPA per play, which I know now we're getting like way into baseball style statistics, but it's basically saying, how does the offense perform with just the quarterback? Like, let's take away some of these other things, drops, interception returns, run after catch. Jordan Love right now is in a tier with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson only. Wow. Seems good. 4th in EPA per play on the season. So he's not been making those mistakes. He's been able to avoid pressure and create. He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the NFL since he's become the starter. It's really hard to create a sack on him. But what teams have done, Ross, is they've said, we're going to blitz you. They've been the most blitz team in the NFL this year. Almost 40% of their dropbacks feature a blitz by the opponent. And they've said, we're going to have to play the variance game with Jordan Love. We're just going to hope he throws us 1 or 2, hope against hope that we catch them, and see if we can score enough on the other side. And, 10 times it hasn't worked, 4 times it has. Yeah. And the Saints, 8th lowest blitz percentage in the NFL. So if they come out there and start trying to blitz Jordan Love, they're doing something that they're very uncomfortable doing. So that might end up putting them in a greater detriment than it would be putting them in any type of advantageous situation with Jordan Love. I want to ask you one question about the Green Bay Packers defense. Fantastic against the run so far this season, a top 10 in terms of raw stats, but also up there in terms of EPA per rush, averaging very well there. But the pressure rate is 5th lowest in the NFL. So what's working for the run defense that isn't working for the pass rush? I wish I knew. Frankly, no.
It's challenging when you see that, right?
They're coming off one of their most impressive pass rush games of the pass rush games of the year. 7 sacks against the conglomeration of Geno Smith and Sam Howell. And it's a Seahawks front that has had issues, right? Pass protection all season. They got Abraham Lucas back, and the Packers abused him. I mean, abused him. It didn't matter if it was Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox, didn't matter. They abused him. And that is a change. Like, Ross, this is a team that traded Preston Smith at the trade deadline and got better with their pass rush by playing guys you have never heard of, by playing Aaron Mosby, and Brenton Cox, who, unless you're a Florida fan, our pal Brandon Olson was like, you're going to love this guy or hate this guy or both. And he's been great.
That's very Brandon analysis.
It is. He's been great for the Packers as a secondary pass rusher. So the pressure rate has been ticking up lately. They do a really good job disguising. Jeff Hafley told this defense they want to be the best disguised team in the NFL. And so what they're doing is they're showing something. They may show a 6 or a 7-man pressure and only bring 4, but it's not the 4 you think they're going to bring.
Sure. Yeah.
And so on the first third down of the game, they show an all-out pressure look with the nickel pressed up in the slot, which is dead giveaway. They're going to send the slot. Geno Smith slides the protection that way. Guess what? Slot didn't come. And they run a game to the other side. Edgerrin Cooper loops around and gets the sack. They love messing with pass protection rules.
Yeah.
And so they're really good at that kind of stuff. So they've been efficient turning pressures into sacks this year. Is that a little concerning that they're not getting more down-to-down pressure? Yeah, I think it is. You'd like to see that number be higher, but they've been effective. And again, they're coming off their best pass rush performance of the season. So you have to be pretty happy about where they sit right now. The thing is, they've been very reliant on turnovers. If you look at like their success rate numbers, they're much lower than their EPA per play numbers, even their DVOA numbers, which takes into account some of the success rate. Turnovers, I think, Ross, is going to be one of the huge keys in this game. We'll talk about it more when we come back. A Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints crossover Thursday. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We mentioned the Packers 14 and a half points. Oh my goodness, 14 and a half point favorites according to our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. I've been telling you all week, you might not normally bet a team minus 1,100 on the money line, because what are you really going to get out of a $5 bet at minus 1,100? Well, if it's your first one with this FanDuel Sportsbook app, which gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place, you can get $150 in bonus bets if you hit that $5 money line bet at minus 1,100. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more everywhere, just right in the same place. Just all stuff you might be getting other places. It's right in your app. FanDuel.com to join it today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back here, Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints. A crossover Thursday for Monday Night Football. Ross Jackson, Peter Bukowski with you. You know this. It's right there in the description in the podcast, right in your app or on YouTube, wherever you are. Ross, I mentioned turnovers before we went to break. This is a Packers defense that has specialized in turnovers, been among league leaders all season long. It is the one thing that in a game like this, when you're 2 touchdown favorites, that can turn things. If the Packers turn the ball over 2 or 3 times, that seems to be the clearest path if you're a Saints fan to go, if we can get Jordan Love to throw us a couple of these, that's how we try and stay in this game.
Yeah, the big issue for New Orleans is that while turnovers were the name of the game for them early on in the season, over the course of the past 4 or 5 games or so, they've not been generating the turnovers nearly at the same rate. There's a Demario Davis interception recently. He actually had one that he dropped as well. He came up in the post-game presser and looked right at us and said, after I'm done with here, I'm going to go home, jump on Amazon, and I'm going to get an express shipment of some hands because I need some hands. He dropped 2 interceptions that day. Came back a couple weeks later.
I do need to know where he's getting whatever he's getting from the fountain of youth, because he's still, like he's approaching 40 and still playing like an elite player. It's really remarkable what he's been able to do.
Yeah, insane. He did wherever he got the fountain of youth. It ain't from Amazon, because it ain't readily available like that. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. If Prize Picks had a more or less for Demario Davis at 40 years of NFL play, not 40 years old, but 40 years of NFL play, I might consider taking the more on that situation.
Yeah,
but
he's 35 and playing like he's 28. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. And he just had one of his better games, 14 tackles, a sack, two tackles for a loss, and then several pressures as well. So just came off one of his better games of the season. So he's going to be a guy that's going to be big in terms of trying to generate those turnovers, either by pass rushing and trying to force by that blitz, trying to force those mistakes like we were talking about from Jordan Love, if they can get them, or just prowling the middle of the field and trying to take away some options. So he's going to be a key player to watch in that very situation when it comes to the turnovers. Meanwhile, over the Saints offensive side, keeping away from the turnovers is going to be a little tricky, right? I mean, you've got a good defense and a good team on the other side that's going to apply pressure with the success of its offense, and a rookie quarterback more than likely that's got to be able to respond to that. That's a tricky situation to be in.
I have a maybe indelicate question.
Sure.
Do the Saints fans want to win this game?
I think so. I think for the most part, you'll find that Saints fans do want to see them win, because a lot of Saints fans are excited about Spencer Rattler, and they're more excited about Spencer Rattler than they are kind of excited about any quarterback you're going to get in this year's draft if you're not picking in the top 3. Like, there's really, this quarterback class is like dismal outside of maybe some of the top guys, and even some of the top guys the jury is very much out on. So we'll see which way it goes there. But I think that you'll probably hear like, oh, well, they should be vying for draft position, but wait and see what else happens around. The Saints went for the win last week, and if they would have won last week, it wouldn't have impacted their draft position at all. That could potentially happen again here come Monday with all the games complete on Sunday.
I loved the decision. Like I was saying, go for 2. You guys should be going for 2, especially in a season like this. And I think it speaks to the impact that Darren Rizzi has had. Because, like, do you think Dennis Allen makes that call?
Exactly. And no, I don't. And here's the other thing. You go back to the 4th downs that they attempted against the Los Angeles Rams at home. The fact that when the Rams, when they were driving and they were one potential touchdown away from tying that game, but they were going to go for 2 had they got that touchdown to go for the win. You look at the very first 4th down of Darren Rizzi's tenure up against the Atlanta Falcons. They marched out there, went for it, didn't get it. It's just part of what it is that Darren Rizzi does. He promised a couple of things. He promised passion, he promised fight, and he promised that the team would not be boring. And so far he's made good on that promise. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is a little bit for Packers fans who are maybe extremely online or just extremely obsessed with their team, which I assume is most of my audience. They remember that Darren Rizzi was a potential candidate for the Packers special teams job once upon a time. And according to the reporting and some of the things that I've heard, that was scuttled because they could not come to an agreement with the administration on the money. One of the few times I've ever heard of the Packers administration in a situation like, because they don't have an owner, remember?
Right.
Coming in and saying, we don't really do that. And I just wonder if like 2 years later, he had tried to do that, Matt LaFleur, after winning 13 games back-to-back seasons, that they just sort of say, yeah, here's a blank check, like whatever you want. They did that. They made Mike Pettin. Mike Pettin was one of the highest paid defensive coordinators. They made Rich Bisaccia the highest paid special teams coordinator in the NFL. So it's one of those sliding doors moments. Like there is definitely a timeline where Darren Rizzi is the special teams coordinator for the Packers. They win the Super Bowl in 2021 because they don't have such a dog water special teams group. Unit. and Darren Rizzi is now, not the interim coach for the New Orleans Saints. Is he someone that you think Saints fans are like, hey, like, give this guy a legitimate shot to keep this job?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. It's kind of the one exception that I've seen for a while around the idea of like, hey, stick with the in-house guy, and people actually being kind of okay with it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that say, no, blow it up, go ahead, completely redo everything, all that. But the fact of the matter is that there's only so much the Saints can blow up this offseason because of their very precarious salary cap situation, which we have to revisit every season. They're like $62 million over the salary cap.
Small potatoes, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, small potatoes, $62 million over the salary cap. That's nothing. But that's going to be a part of the truth for them going into 2025. They don't really have the ability to blow a lot of stuff up. So why not give the guy that's in-house, that has the rhythm with the guys, give your offensive coordinator a second year for a change, all these other things, and then be able to kind of walk into a second year of a similar setup here as you're ending in 2024. And then if it doesn't work in 2 or 3 years, after you've hit the reset button and after you have a better product to offer from a financial standpoint, then you can go and look for another head coach at that time. And I'll tell you what, too, when it comes to Darren Rizzi, I think you'll see the value of Darren Rizzi here as Packers fans going into this game, because a big reason why the Saints have won their games, 2 blocked field goals, being able to control the field position battle, all those other things. Those are going to be things that are probably going to be present. in this game to where you're going to see Darren Rizzi and what he does on the special team side be a factor in the game, just as valuable as the offensive or defensive factor.
Ross, that's not helpful to me.
I'm very sorry
with the fan base, because this is going to freak them out, because we are laying out the case for how Packer fans have seen the Packers blow stupid games like this in the past, where you get a punt blocked, or you get a field goal blocked, return for a touchdown, or
the Saints haven't had a punt block in a little while. That's a good point, Peter. I'm glad you brought that up.
I don't like this at all. So look, I think the Packers should win this game handily. I think they will. I think this is going to be one of those like 30-14 kind of games, 30-17 kind of games.
So you think they cover?
I'm not going to bet on the Packers to cover 14.5. I'll tell you that. But just because I think that's ludicrous in the NFL for anyone to be 14.5 point favorites, though the Ravens, of course, they more than covered against the Giants last week. So we'll see. And the Packers had their problems with Tommy DeVito last year. We know how that looks. So I think this is a better Packers team. I said on social media the other day, Ross, that this is the most complete Packers team since 2010. If that's true, and by DVOA, that is just like, that's what the numbers say.
Right.
So if that's true, the Packers should win. They should win comfortably. And we'll get to podcast live after the game.
Yeah, it's gonna be a ton of fun. I think the Packers walk away with a win here too. I think the Saints win also, or Saints can win also, because I think that the Saints are in the world of moral victories now, because you're not going to the playoffs, right? You need to win out. You need the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lose out. It's not going to happen at this point. And so what you want to see is, do the young guys like Spencer Rattler, running back Kendre Miller, left tackle Taliesin Fuanga, who's been awesome so far this season, and maybe some of the younger defensive guys, do you start to see some of the building blocks for your future that upon which you get to lay a foundation going into 2025, step up and shine a little bit? And I think if you see that, then you're in a winning situation in terms of what your future can look like. But I don't think that this is a game where the Saints are going to be walking away with a win in the win-loss column in particular.
Yeah, and the Packers, I think they want to avoid a Pyrrhic victory, right? Where they guys get hurt, or someone who tries to play there's a lot of Packer fans going, do not play Jair Alexander in this game. It's okay. Like, they need him in the playoffs. And so I think you will see them be a little conservative with some of these guys. They would love nothing more than to play Malik Willis in the fourth quarter, So not that like that's going to happen necessarily, but I think that's certainly probably the goal. Like, is it really smart analysis to suggest that the team wouldn't love to blow out the other team? But but I think that's sort of what they're looking at, is let's just go win. That's all that matters, and then we'll figure out the rest. Ross, a pleasure as always, my friend. Locked On Packers, Locked On Saints. Thanks to everyone who makes those shows their first listens. We appreciate the crossover in audience this week. The Packer fans listening to Ross's show, and the Saints fan listening to Locked On Packers. And we will see you guys very, very soon. Make sure you stay locked on.